The fluorescent lamp above my apartment door suddenly blazed to life. My heart stopped. The motion sensor only activated when something moved nearby. But there was nothing there, just empty air, and a strange, shimmering distortion in the darkness, like heat waves rising from summer asphalt, but moving inward toward a center. And then I saw it, a pair of eyes, crescent-shaped, twisted into an eternal smile. The pupils were tiny black dots, like pinpricks in white paper. And above those horrifying eyes, the scalp was completely shaved. This was no ordinary spirit. This was something far worse. My name is David, and I live in apartment 301 of a 4-story building with 8 units total. In Japan, many apartment buildings require a keycard to enter the main entrance, providing security for residents. I had planned to study with friends at the university library for 2 or 3 hours, but we knew it would just turn into chatting, so we cancelled. Normally this wouldn't matter, but it was final exam period. Everyone was desperate to focus. Let me describe my apartment layout. You open the front door and enter the genkan. That's the traditional Japanese entryway where you remove your shoes. Immediately to the right is the toilet. To the left you continue forward. There's a washing machine on the immediate left. A sink straight ahead and the bath to the right from the genkan. If you go straight you reach the kitchen, and a relatively large space with a table and 1 chair. Further in, 3 sliding doors separate this area from the living room, which is about the same size as the kitchen area. Beyond that is the final destination, the balcony. That's basically the layout. After parting with my friends, I returned to my apartment. The sky visible from the balcony was already growing dim. It was early August, so I think it was past 7 p.m. I opened all the windows in the living room and kitchen to create airflow. From the refrigerator, I took out a cafe latte I'd bought in bulk from the nearby Lawson convenience store. Lawson is one of Japan's major convenience store chains, found on practically every street corner. These drinks were essential for surviving exam period. I went to the living room, loosening my belt and setting down my backpack. It was a Newton backpack by Trickster, recently purchased and one of my favorites. The kotatsu table in the center of the living room was at the perfect height. A kotatsu is a traditional Japanese heated table with a blanket underneath, though mine wasn't heated since it was summer. I'd brought it all the way from my family home. I sat with my back to the balcony, and took out my pencil case, notebook and reference books from my backpack. I love this moment. The instant I begin touching academic material, all worldly desires vanish. I treasure this alone time more than anything. I sipped the cafe latte, and let my mechanical pencil, modified and lightened to perfection, race across the notebook. The friction sound of paper and graphite became my background music, heightening my concentration. Before I knew it, it was past 9 p.m. Honestly, I felt uneasy that my concentration had broken after less than 2 hours. I was being watched. It was barely what you could call a gaze, extremely weak, but I definitely felt it. The area around my shoulder blades tingled unpleasantly. It was decidedly unwelcome. I quietly turned around. Of course, nothing was wrong, just the balcony. Nothing romantic about it at all. I couldn't simply dismiss it as being too sensitive, since that incident a year ago. No matter how I thought about it, I felt the gaze coming from the front, toward the genkan. From beyond the door perhaps. Of course, there was also the possibility it was coming from inside the room. But that would be tantamount to admitting the owner of the gaze wasn't human. There was nowhere to hide, and I briefly suspected surveillance cameras, but quickly dismissed that as ridiculous. Actually, that would be preferable. I stared intently at the genkan door. The ticking of the clock's second hand created an odd sense of tension. Could it be another resident of this building? This apartment building was impossible to enter without a key. A neighbor perhaps? No, the adjacent unit was vacant. Did I lock the door? Yes, I locked it. I secured it with a double lock and even put on the chain. Wait. This building requires a key to enter from the main entrance, but the stairwell area is open air, Someone could climb up if they really wanted to. An unpleasant anxiety began to well up. A stalker maybe. If so, they couldn't get inside the room. But maybe this was just my imagination. I should stop overthinking it. Still there. It had been 30 minutes now. That was far too long, no matter what. Feeling an indescribable fear, I reached for the TV remote. The notebook paper stuck to my arm. Sweat had made the paper damp and wavy. It's summer. I sweat all the time. More disturbing was realizing I'd been frozen in the same position for 30 minutes. The body doesn't lie. Dark thoughts were spinning in my head. I forcibly pushed them away and grabbed the remote. I desperately wanted some lively sound, and was reaching for the power button when it happened. The Gencon lamp lit up. I froze in place, staring at the entryway. My apartment building has motion sensor lights at each Gencon. They activate when they detect human movement nearby. They turn off after 5 or 6 seconds, but stay on if something keeps moving nearby. Of course, if something enters from the Gencon, the light would activate then too, but there was no visible change at the Gencon. Only the lamp, blazing brightly. An electric current ran down my spine, making all my hair stand on end. I felt my core contract tightly. At the same time, foul-smelling sweat broke out all over my body. Looking closer, the area illuminated by the lamp seemed hazy, as if dust were floating in the air. Whether this was actually floating dust or due to some other cause, I couldn't tell. I couldn't move a muscle, as if paralyzed. I couldn't look away either. Immediately after the lamp went out, the area 3 meters ahead was dimly illuminated by light leaking from the living room. Complete silence, not a single sound. At this moment, I was still frozen in position, holding the remote toward the TV. Then the lamp lit up again, still there. What did it mean for the light to turn on again? It had either left the room or entered it. The lamp reacted to the initial movement of either action. In other words, it had entered the Gencon, stood still there, then began moving. Probably forward or backward. It might have already invaded the room during the first activation, but from the presence I felt, it had definitely lingered at the Gencon. Right after I reached this conclusion, it happened. Of the 3 sliding doors separating the kitchen and living room, I had pushed 2 to the left and 1 to the right, leaving only the center open. Suddenly, it appeared in that one door width space. Appeared isn't the right expression, but neither is nothing was visible. It was like heat waves rising from summer asphalt, that kind of shimmer. But unlike normal heat waves that flow upward, this distortion moved from the outside toward the center in a swaying motion. It came right up to the table where I had my study materials spread out. It moved along the table's edge, and passed immediately, truly immediately beside me. And its gaze never left me, following this series of movements with just my eyes. Not turning my head, I caught sight of the curtain on the large window directly behind me. It was bulging toward the balcony side. This couldn't be caused by wind, which meant it was now on the balcony, and it was looking at me from there. The gaze pierced my back. The extreme tension and fear were making me nauseous. After a while, the shimmer retraced its exact path back. Of course, its gaze remained fixed on me. The Gencon lamp lit up. The movement stopped there. It stood still, continuing to look at me. The lamp lost its light. After some time, the lamp lit up once more, and the shimmer disappeared beyond the door. But just because it was no longer visible, didn't mean it was gone. I could still sense its presence. It was still watching me. Nearly 30 more minutes passed before, finally, the gaze disappeared. The moment it did, I exhaled heavily and collapsed onto the table. When I came to, it was morning. This was my first encounter with it. Honestly, I couldn't focus on exams anymore. It came to my room every night. I noticed something different 2 days after the first encounter. At first I thought I was seeing things, but by the 3rd appearance, I was certain. The top of its head was beginning to show. During the 2nd appearance, I thought I saw a black dot at the top of the shimmer, but on the third night I could clearly make out scalp and coarse hair. I was terrified beyond measure, because what would happen next was obvious. I considered not going home and staying at a friend's place, but it was exam period and I'd be a burden. Besides, if the shimmer was attached to me personally rather than my room, it would be completely meaningless. I thought about closing all 3 sliding doors, but it probably wouldn't matter to the shimmer anyway. And if it suddenly appeared, I'd be more than startled. I'd have a heart attack. I had no recourse, and since I'd always been unconnected to such things, I didn't know how to deal with it. If I left it alone, I'd probably end up seeing its entire body. I'd rather die. 4th night. It came again. Its behavior was exactly the same as the first night, but its appearance was different. The upper part of its forehead had appeared too fat. Only the top of the head should be visible, yet the forehead was appearing too quickly. So this wasn't the forehead, it was part of the scalp. The hair in that area was missing. It was a strange appearance. If this were a normal person, only hair should be visible at this point. Its appearance was as if the hair above the forehead had been intentionally shaved off. Moreover, the forehead-like area always faced me as it moved, even when passing right beside me, even when turning back. 6th night. It was female. This thing was female. By now I could see up to the eyebrows, but these were also shaved or nearly hairless. How could I tell it was female? First, the hairstyle. It definitely wasn't short-haired. Looking at the hair above the eyebrows, this was either semi-long or long hair. The hair was eerily wavy. Second, looking at the eyebrow area, the bone didn't protrude. A male would have more pronounced ridges. This had the characteristically flat facial features of a woman. I couldn't be certain, but I was 90% sure it was female. And as I'd thought, it had shaved the hair above its forehead, almost up to the crown of its head. The only word for it was grotesque. I was already mentally exhausted. I endured over an hour of its madly persistent gaze. I'd reached my limit. I contacted a reliable friend. Ever since the major incident a year ago, Marcus had told me to contact him immediately if anything strange happened. The phone rang, but he didn't answer. It immediately switched to voicemail. I told him everything I'd experienced in as much detail as possible. By the time I closed my phone, it was already past midnight. Maybe it was too late to call. I felt sorry about it. I was completely exhausted, so I decided to go to the washroom to brush my teeth. That's when it happened. The second visit of the night. That characteristic sticky gaze announced its presence. I couldn't believe it. An unprecedented fear made my heart race. "This is bad," was my honest reaction. I shuddered to imagine how much of its form had now appeared. I seriously considered running away. Of course, that was impossible. After dutifully remaining beyond the door for 30 minutes as usual, it finally appeared at the junkan. Illuminated by the lamp for just a moment, I saw an eye. Its form had finally revealed that much. It was exactly like a demon mask from Japanese theater. In Japanese culture, these masks called hanya represent jealous female demons, with twisted features. The pupil was abnormally small. You could call it a dot. The eye was distorted into a crescent shape. It was smiling. I couldn't see the nose or mouth yet, but from that eye and the cheeks bulge, I understood. It glided soundlessly to the front of the table, passed beside me the same way, and went to the balcony. Only the upper half of its face, wordlessly staring at me. The lower half was still covered by the shimmer. Incredibly, at such a moment I felt something almost divine about its appearance. When it returned from the balcony, it backed away while still glaring at me with that smiling eye. After another 30 minutes, the demon's gaze disappeared beyond the door. Immediately after, my vision suddenly went white and cloudy. It felt like my eyeballs were wrapped in translucent membrane. For the first time I was personally harmed. My vision was impaired to the point where I could barely make out where things were. This sudden, unreasonable situation left me panicking. My mind was flooded with incomprehension, and I couldn't take any action. The flood subsided when my phone's ringtone sounded. Using the sound and indicator light as guides, I groped for the phone and answered. It was Marcus. Thank God. What are you doing now? I don't know what's what anymore. Right after I left that voicemail, it appeared again. This is the first time it's shown up twice in one day. The moment it disappeared, I lost my sight. What? Why didn't you contact me immediately? Wait right there, don't hang up. Marcus's voice shook with anger, and I began hearing muffled sounds on the other end. Wind, probably the sound of wind hitting the phone as Marcus ran. Soon I could hear talking. A fairly loud voice sounded male. As I strained to listen, Marcus suddenly started speaking. The person I'm about to put on is someone incredibly trustworthy and capable. Sorry, but there's nothing I can do. Answer their questions as accurately as possible. I'm handing over the phone now. Marcus said this without giving me a chance to speak. Then a different voice came on, much deeper and lower than Marcus's. I am Robert Morrison. Marcus has told me about your situation. Please describe in detail what this spirit looks like. It had eyes like a demon mask. Also, the hair above its forehead and its eyebrows were shaved. It seemed to be smiling too. I heard a sigh from the other end. An ominous sigh. That spirit is called Danjishi. It's a famous possessing deity. Danjishi originally means an infinitesimally small unit of measurement. But that's what we call it. I'm going to give you instructions now. Listen carefully and don't miss a word. Possessing deities can communicate with each other. Marcus told me you were once touched by a possessing deity. This Danjishi is a high-level deity that can move freely, but it's probably bound to the land where you live through a local earth deity. That's how it learned of your existence. Once you have a relationship with one deity, word spreads among them. Your encounter with Danjishi is because of that previous contact. There's only one thing you must do now. Don't open your mouth, not for a single moment. Specifically, don't show your teeth. If you fail to keep your mouth sealed, you'll no longer be human. I'm sorry to frighten you, but this is fact. You'll have to fast briefly, but I'll be there tomorrow. Until then, no matter what happens, absolutely do not open your mouth until I say it's okay. You're incredibly lucky to have Marcus as a friend. Thank the deities properly for that. Right now you can still barely make it. Listen, follow what I said strictly. I'll put Marcus back on now. This is really serious, David. But don't worry, Mr. Morrison will definitely help you. Follow his instructions carefully. Contact me when this is over. Hang in there, David. Marcus said this forcefully and hung up. At that moment, I gasped. It was on the table, right on the table in front of me. I could make out the eerie outline of its face. But that face only went down to around the bridge of the nose. Below that, the shimmer had disappeared. I almost screamed, but desperately held it back. For a moment, Mr. Morrison's instructions completely vanished from my mind, but Marcus's encouraging words immediately flashed through my brain and I managed not to open my mouth. I felt like I made eye contact with it at extremely close range. I reflexively closed my eyes, but I could still clearly sense it staring at me. I clenched my fists and endured desperately. The aura surrounding Danjishi had clearly changed to something ominous and aggressive. 1 hour. 2 hours. I no longer knew how much time had passed, but it was still there. I truly felt like I was going insane. I pictured my family and best friends, fighting desperately to maintain my sanity. The sound of cicadas began. Morning had come. Though I felt some relief, Danjishi showed no signs of leaving. Its persistence was astonishing, but the one saving grace was that it did nothing. It just stared. More impossible amounts of time passed. I heard something, a heavy hard sound repeated several times. Knocking. Someone was knocking on my door. I finally realized Mr. Morrison had arrived. I'd been in a kind of sensory deprivation state. At the same time, Danjishi's gaze disappeared. Being careful not to open my mouth, I bumped into things as I made my way to the Gen Con and opened the door. Well done. What incredible power. This entire building feels like it's deep in a forest. Don't open your mouth yet. I sense a presence nearby. It's angry about an outsider's presence. Let's finish this quickly. Miss Morrison led me to sit formally in front of the table and covered me with cloth. It'll be hot, but bear with it. I'm going to make Danjishi lose interest in you. Keep your mouth closed and don't move. After that I heard something being placed on the table and the sound of a match being lit. A strange smell hit my nose. It was similar to incense, but clearly different. Mr. Morrison didn't speak. I heard no prayers or chanting, but I could hear his breath, so he seemed to be moving his mouth silently. After a while I heard water sounds. Chapan. Chapan. Like water drops falling into a puddle. It echoed in my brain as if there were reverb. Then I heard someone's breathing. Not Mr. Morrison's. Quiet. Like deep breathing. Finally, I heard one deep sigh. Huh. And then no more sounds. It seems okay. Did you hear anything? I nodded repeatedly under the cloth. Did it sound like a campfire? I shook my head repeatedly. Good. The anger seems to have subsided. You're safe now. Remove the cloth. It's okay to open your mouth. When I opened my eyes, my vision was clear. Miss Morrison was smiling gently. Am I saved? Yes. It gave up more easily than expected. What kind of sounds did you hear? Water sounds. Chapan. Chapan. Also, someone's breathing. And a sigh at the end. Very interesting. The water sounds were probably from your ancestors. They protected you. The final sigh was Danjishi's sound. But I don't understand the breathing. It wasn't anything bad though. Anyway, you did well. You're safe now. If I had left it alone, what would have happened? This will be unpleasant, but do you want to know? I answered with a simple yes. The terrifying thing about Danjishi is how it quietly steals people's lives. It characteristically appears gradually from the head down, and this corresponds to what it steals from the possessed person. When it shows up to the eyes, it means Danjishi has stolen your eyes. If it had stolen up to your mouth, you wouldn't be able to speak. You couldn't call for help. At that point your mental faculties would be completely taken over. In other words, you'd die. From there it's fast. That's why it's called Danjishi. The time it takes to steal your life is incredibly brief. After stealing your arms and legs and entire body, it forces you to take your own life, making you strangle yourself, hang yourself, or run into traffic. The methods are limitless, but this results in complete death. Most hopeless of all is that those who die this way become part of Danjishi. They're absorbed. They can't become Buddha. They can't be reborn and must live forever within Danjishi. You were one step away from that fate. It was truly the last moment. People continue to lose their lives this way endlessly. Including you. I've only been able to save 8 people. Everyone else was already an empty shell when I received the request. Or I couldn't save them because I incurred Danjishi's wrath. What can I tell their families? Even if you pray at their graves, or hold memorial services, their souls aren't there. But I can't tell them the truth. I think you can understand that suffering. Even now I confess to all of them every night. Mr. Morrison looked very sad as he said this. Tears naturally overflowed. I had never been so grateful for life. At the same time I learned that dying normally, and becoming Buddha is also a blessed thing. Later, when I told Marcus I'd Zayli survived, he cried tears of joy. He said I had saved him too. But sometimes, late at night, I wonder about those 8 people Mr. Morrison mentioned. The ones he couldn't save, their souls trapped forever within Danjishi, unable to find peace. And I think about that breathing I heard during the ritual. The sound that even Mr. Morrison couldn't explain. Was it really my ancestors protecting me? Or was it something else entirely? Something that's still out there, watching, waiting. Here's what I want you to think about as you go to sleep tonight. Have you ever felt eyes on you when no one was there? Have you ever dismissed that feeling as just your imagination? Because after what I experienced, I have to ask you this question. What if you're wrong? What if something is actually watching you right now? And what if it's already begun to show itself? Sweet dreams.